We're starting on Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis. The first word on the line towards the bottom is where it says Rabbi Laza Omer. This goes back on the Mishnah where it said a person that was makdish all of his nechasim. Amongst the nechasim that he was makdish was also yeinois, shmanim, oifis, wine, oil, or birds. So Rabbi Laza says that you sell them to people that are going to use them to bring on the mizbeach, and then the money you are makir of a carbon oila. So the Gemara brings the source. It's the same source that we had before in the Gemara. From where do you see that anything that could be brought in the mizbeach that you were makdish has to be used to be brought as an oila? Rabbi Avo b'shem Rab Shimon ben Lakish said, "Time of Rabbi Laza." The reason of Rabbi Laza's opinion is because by carbon oila it says, "Daber alaram al banov, ashi yakrivu lashem la'oila." In that pasuk it says, "L'chol nedreyem or l'chol nedvaisam." Anything that you donate to the Beis Hamikdash that could be brought as a carbon has to be brought as an oila. Hakoil karev oila. Everything has to be brought as an oila. Now in that pasuk it also says, "L'ritzoinchem tamim zachar." So yachol, I would think, afila oifis. If you makdish a bird, so the bird itself should be brought as an oila. Or even if the bird itself is not brought as an oila, if you sell those things, like for example over here we had oil and other things that you sell, so maybe the birds could be brought, you can buy birds to bring birds as an oila. Talmud loymar ba bakar, v'loy oifis. The pasuk here says when you have to bring an oila from different things that were brought, that could be brought on the mizbeach, it's only bakar, only animals, but v'loy oifis, not from birds. Now the Gemara is going to ask a stira here, or a question on Rabbi Yochanan, based on what it said before in the Gemara. Over here we're discussing a person that's makdish all of his nechasim, and amongst his nechasim there were things that cannot be brought as a carbon, but they're animals, but they can't be brought as a carbon, and therefore you have to sell them, and then the money is brought for, you use it to buy a carbon oila. That was the halacha that it said in the Mishnah. So one of the examples that we had in the Mishnah was, you had amongst all your nechasim that you were makdish, there was a behemoth that was an akeva. You can't bring an akeva as an oila. So what do? You sell it, and then with the money you buy an oila. That's what Rabbi Eliezer said in the Mishnah. That was one case we had before. Another case we had before is a person that was makdish an akeva for an oila. So again, it can't be brought as an oila. The question is, if it can't be brought as an oila, does any kedusha take effect on the body of this animal? What was the nafkamina we had before regarding the halacha of tumura? If a kedusha takes effect, then there will be a halacha of tumura. So now the Gemara asks a stira in these two dinim. Zok the Gemara, Rabbi Yirmiyah v'Rabbun bar Chia have Yasivin. They were sitting together, v'Amri Taman, and they said as follows: Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Taman Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Before Rabbi Yochanan said, Taime de Rab Shimon. The reason of Rab Shimon, this is Rab Shimon that was quoted before on the Amud that said that there's no tmura, or actually Rab Shimon said that there is tmura. When you're makdish on a keva, even though the nekeva can't be brought as an oila, but still there's a kedusha that takes effect on this nekeva. And what's the reason? Shekei nekeva sheba'oif ksheira. You do find a nekeva by a bird that's kosher to be brought as an oila. So therefore the kedusha takes effect on this nekeva. Lava yoila can be brought as an oila, and therefore there's going to be a din of temura. That's one halacha that Rabbi Yochanan said. And over here he's saying as follows. Over here we're saying differently. What are we saying over here in the Mishnah? Over here Rabbi Laza is saying in the Mishnah, when you're makdish an oif, because the oif can't be brought as an oila, what do? You sell it, you redeem it, and immediately you buy something else to be brought as an oila. But the halacha is, and we had this yesterday, anything that's roy to be brought as a carbon, as kedusha on it for a carbon, you can't redeem it. You have to wait until it gets a mum, and only then could you redeem it to bring it as a carbon. So over here in the Mishnah, when it's speaking about an oif that can't be brought as a carbon, how could the Mishnah say that you redeem it, and then you buy money to bring from it, you take the money to buy for an oila? But if it does not have a mum, you cannot redeem it, because Rabbi Yochanan himself explained that it has kedusha on the guf of the nekeva, but you will makdish for a oila, so the same thing should apply to an oif. You should have kedusha on it, and you shouldn't be able to redeem it. So the Gemara explains there's a difference between being makdish on a keva that you can't bring as an oila, and being makdish an oif a bird that you can't bring as an oila. That's going to be the point of the answer here. Amar Rav Yosi, so Rav Yosi said, Kiyamte, I was Mekayim, I answered this question, Kiha, the Amar Rab Shmuel, B'Shem Rab Zeira. Like that what Rab Yochanan said is similar to what Rab Shmuel in the name of Rabbi Zeira said. And he said as follows, Kol she'einu yechayla likarev. Anytime you makdish something, and you can't bring it as a carbon, loihi, not it itself, and v'loi dameha, and not even the value of it. It can't be brought at all as a carbon. Then I say, loikotcha ela hektish damim. So then, there's no kedusha that takes effect on the body of this animal, and it's only kadosh for its value. And va'at omris yaos, and therefore you, Rabbi Lazar, in the Mishnah said the right halacha regarding the birds. And here the Gemara is going to explain, when it comes to a bird, it can't be brought as a carbon, and it can't even be sold for the value of it to be brought as a carbon. Why not? A bird that you were makdish cannot be brought as an oila, the chsiv babakar. Because the Torah says when you makdish anything, so only the animals can be brought as an oila. The birds are going to have to be sold. They can't be brought as an oila. But v'loi oifis, liv daisai, you also cannot redeem any birds that you were makdish. What's the reason? Einat yachol, you can't. And here the Gemara brings a halacha, which it says in other places in the Gemara, she'ein lo'oif pidyon. The halacha is birds cannot be redeemed. Only animals can be redeemed, but oifis cannot be redeemed. So when a person was makdish this oif, not the oif itself, not the bird itself could be brought as a carbon, and not the value of it, not even to redeem it could it be brought as a carbon. So lefum kain tzarich meimar, if so you must say that leikatsha ela kedushas damim. Originally, when the person was makdish it, he was never makdish it for the body of this bird itself. It was only the value of it that became kadosh, and therefore you sell it, and then you bring from it, and even before it gets a mum, you could sell it immediately, and you bring the value of it as a carbon oila. That's by an oif. By an oif, there's no kedusha that takes effect whatsoever. But by an animal that's an akeva, even though it can't be brought as an oila, but there is somewhat of a kedusha that takes effect on it, because we find an akeva that can be brought as an oila, and therefore there is going to be a din of tumur over there, and you won't be able to redeem it so easily. You're going to have to wait until it gets a mum. So there's a difference between an oif and an akeva. That's the point of the Gemara's answer. Sagt die Gemara weiter, Chavraye b'shem Rab Yochanan, or Rab Evu bar Nagri, Omar Kumi Rabila, said in front of Rab Ila, b'shem Rab Yochanan, in the name of Rab Yochanan. Taime dehein Tana. The reason for this Tana that was quoted before, and this is the Tana of Rab Shimon ben Yehuda that said in the name of Rab Shimon, that if you makdish an akeva for a oila, for a chatos, or for a pesach, because they're not fit to be brought as any of those karbanis, so the kedusha does not take effect, and they're not brought as there's no din of tumura at all, they could just be redeemed right away. So he brought the source of this Tana. Because it says in the pasuk, Vim kol behemet meya, asher lo yakrivu mimena karban Hashem, a behemet meya, that you cannot bring a carbon. So it says there in the pasuk, it's redeemed. There's no kedusha that takes effect on the body of it. So ma tamud loima. What is that pasuk talking about? Tmeya, when it says tmeya. So the question over here is, as the Mefarshim explained, it already says in another pasuk, the halacha about a behemet tmeya. So why does it say it here again? Ella, the answer is afilit tmeya ba'oisei Hashem. Tmeya here does not mean that it's literally tame, like a non-kosher animal, but even if you makdish something that's not the kind that you need to be used, tmeya ba'oisei Hashem means it's not the min that you need, like you will makdish on the keva for an oila or a chatos or a pesach. So it doesn't, or not to a chatas, sorry, a oila, asham, or a pesach. So then the kedusha doesn't take effect, and you could redeem it immediately, and therefore there's no tumura either. The kashi b'da, however, the question was asked on this drasha, but ksiv, the pasuk there, when it says it could be redeemed, it says vehemid, you have to bring it in front of the kohen, veherech, and he has to evaluate it, and only then could it be redeemed. Now the question of the Gemara is, as the Mefarshim here explain, because it says in the Gemara in Tumura that this halacha, vehemid and veherech, only applies to an animal that the kedusha did take effect on the body. And here we're saying that the kedusha did not take effect, and therefore you could redeem it immediately. Okay, the Gemara leaves that as a question. The Gemara now brings another opinion that says the exact opposite. Rab Zeira b'shem Rab Loza loy oma kain. He did not say the drasha this way, he said it the opposite. Ella, he said as follows. When it says in the pasuk, V'im kol behemet meya shelo yakrivu mimena karban Lashem, So the pasuk here is saying that if it's a behemoth tmeya and you can't bring it as a carbon, then it could be redeemed. So he dashed in the pasuk, Kol she'einu roy likarev, loikan v'loi b'makam acher. The extra word in the pasuk, it says, Asher lo yakrivu mimena karban Hashem, which means it can't be brought for any carbon. Only something that you were makdish, that cannot be brought for any carbon, not here and not in any other case, then it could be redeemed immediately, and eino isa tamura. Therefore, there's no halacha of tamura. Yatzis nekeva la'oila, which does not include a nekeva that you were makdish for an oila, aval pi she'ena ruya likarev kan, even though it cannot be brought as an oila, but ruya likarev v'makam acher, it can be brought for another carbon, or an oif. If it was a bird, it could be brought as a nekeva, as a oila. So therefore that you cannot redeem immediately, and there will be the halacha of tamura that will apply to this. So Rab Ovain v'Rabun Boin Kamen Rab Zeira, they asked on this drasha from Rab Zeira, Harei haroiva v'hanirva, an animal which is roiva and nirva, it had a relationship with a human being. She'einon ru'uyin likarev, they cannot be brought as a carbon ever. Loikan v'loi b'makam acher, not for what you will makdish it for, or not for anything else. And the halacha is, it says in the Braise, v'harei nehein oisen t'mura. There is a halacha of t'mura that takes effect there. In other words, kedusha does take effect on the body of this animal, and there is a din of t'mura. But you're learning out from here that if it can't be brought ever as a carbon, then there's no din of t'mura. Amalain, so he answered them and said, Afani le'amarti ela tmeya mamish. I only said, like an example of a behemoth which is tamei, that cannot at all be brought as a carbon at all. From that min, from an animal which is tamei. It's a non-kosher animal. It's a min that could never be brought as a carbon. An animal which is a reiva and a nirva, so yes, because of this incident, it can't be brought as a carbon. But it's not like an animal which is tamei, that is a min that can never be brought as a carbon. So in this pasuk it's saying an animal which is from a min that could never be brought as a carbon, no kedusha takes effect in it, and you could redeem it immediately. But v'kashi bida, the Gemara concludes with the same question that we had before. But ksiv v'hemid v'herech. Why does the pasuk say v'hemid v'herech, which is usually a halacha that only applies to an animal, that the kedusha did take effect on the body? And the Gemara doesn't answer this. Zok the Mishnah achas lelamed yoim. Once in 30 days. Misharin es halishka. They would estimate for the money that they were paying from the machzas hashekel, so they would have suppliers that would supply whatever they needed for the karbanis. So once in 30 days, they would estimate to see what the price is. And here the Gemara gives an example. What happens if the price will change? So the hektish will always have the upper hand. Kol hamakabel olav l'sapik saltais me'arba. So if you accept it for a certain price to provide 4 sa'ah of flour, and amdu mishalish, and now it became more expensive, and you could only get for that price only 3 sa'ah. Yisapik medalit, the supplier that agreed with the original price, and he was paid for it, so he has to supply the 4 that he said he would supply from the beginning. Once he was paid with money, so kesef is kainim and atayra, and the kesef, the kinyan took effect, and he has to apply the original price. How about if the opposite happens? If the price went down, mishalosh, originally the agreement was that the price was only to provide 3 sa'ah, v'amdu midalit, the price went down, and now for the same price you can get 4, yisapik midalit, he's going to have to provide the new price and give 4. Says the Mefarshim here say, because we say that it's not kain until the Mashiach took effect. Right? In the Rabbanon, you have to do Mashiach, so not until you do Mashiach did the kinyan fully take effect, so now you're going to have to provide with the new price and give more. Shiyat hektish alal yaina. Hektish always has the upper hand when there's a change of price. Imisliya, even after you paid, and hektish got its flour, and it became wormy, Hisliya silas, the flour became wormy, Hisliya loy. The supplier has to take the loss of this as if he wasn't paid yet, as if the sale did not take effect yet, and he's going to have to provide them new flour. And the same thing, vim hechmitz yayin, if the wine became vinegar, hechmitz loy, it becomes vinegar, he is the one that has to take the loss of this. And therefore, eine mekabel ma'osav, we do not give him the money, achiem mizbeach meratza, until it's brought in the mizbeach. Only then does he get paid when it was used properly and it was all in good condition. But now the Gemara brings a Braisa that argues, Tani b'shem Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon said, no, miyad hoyu mekablim es moiseyan, the suppliers that gave the wine and the flour for the karbanis mincha and so on, they would get paid immediately. You don't have to wait until it was brought in the Mizbeach. V'ha'kayanim zrizin. The kayanim mazrizin, and they bring it right away, and it will not become it will not become wormy, it will not become sour or vinegar, and therefore you can pay him right away for this. Hadron aloch perik hatrome. This is the conclusion of the fourth perik of Masechta Shkalim. Sagt the Mishnah, Elu hein amamunim. These were the people that were in charge of different things in the Beis HaMikdash. Shahaya b'mikdash, the people in charge of different things in the Beis HaMikdash, and some of Farshim here say that the names that it's going to say here were names of the people that originally were in charge of this, and for all future generations, that name remained in that thing of the Beis HaMikdash. So for the one that was in charge there. Yochanan ben Pinchas ala chisamais. He was in charge of the chisamais, which was seals or was sort of tokens that were given for people that had to buy a karban mincha, and they got this token in the Beis HaMikdash. They paid for it, and then they got the token, and then they went to the kainim that provided them the flour that they needed. Achya ala nesachim. He was in charge of the nesachim, the wine. Masya ben Shmuel ala paisais. He was in charge of all the lotteries, the geirolas that they made to give everyone their job. Psachya ala kinin. Psachya was in charge of the karbanis, the kinim, which were the karbanis that the ladies that give birth, or the zavin and the zavais, and there's complicated halachas about this that you have to know. Psachya, who is this Psachya, the original one that his name was Psachya? Zeh Mordechai. This was Mordechai at Tzaddik. Why did he get this name, Psachya? He was able to open up and understand things that were difficult to understand, v'darshan, and explain them, and v'yedea b'shivim lashon, and he knew 70 languages. Ben Achya al Chayli Mayim. He was appointed as a doctor to take care of the kainim that had issues with their stomach. Nechunya Chayfesh Shichin. Nechunya was the one that dug ditches and to have water for the people that were regel. Gvini Kruz. Gvini was the one that made announcements. The Gemara will say what this is. Ben Gever was al Ne'ilas Sha'arim. He was appointed for closing the gates in the evening. Ben Bevoi Memuna Lapkia. He was appointed on the wicks. Ben Arza ala Tziltzal. He was appointed on the cymbals that the Levium used to play the music. Hugras ben Levi ala Shir. He was the one that was appointed on singing. Beis Garmu al Maisa Lechem Aponim. Beis Garmu, the house of Garmu, they knew how to make the Lechem Aponim. And Beis Aftines al Maisa Ketores. They knew how to make the Ketores. Ve'alazar ala Pareiches. Alazar was appointed on the Pareiches that they had between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Pinchas Hamalbish. Pinchas was appointed on dressing the Kohanim with their garments. So the Gemara is going to go through many of these different things here as we'll see, but the Gemara starts off as follows. Rab Chizkiah, Amar Rab Simon, V'Rabbanon. There was an argument between Rab Simon and the Rabbanon. Chad Amar, one says, Ksheirei doir v'doir ba lemanis aleim. The Mishnah here is counting the tzaddikim that were appointed on these things in each one of the generations. In other words, we're not talking about all these different people that were in the same generation. The name of that thing, the Beis HaMikdash, came from the tzaddikim of different generations. But another opinion is, Charanam, the other opinion was, Mishahaya ba'oisei adoir, Mana mashe b'doire. They were all in one generation, in the first generation, then by the second Beis HaMikdash, and these were the names, and those names remained. So now the Gemara says, according to there's different girsas how to read this, I'm just going to read it in the girsa the way we have it right over here. Man da amar ksheire kol doir v'doir bal limnois kulon. Again, man da amar ksheire kol doir v'doir. One that says that there were the tzaddikim of different generations. So bal limnois al kulon, he comes and counts all of them, and al kulon u'aimez zeichet tzaddik levracha. That we mentioned, these are the names that remain for all future generations because we remember a tzaddik for a bracha. So these people were all tzaddikim basically. Man da'amar mishaya ba'isa doir mana masha b'doiroi. But one that says that there were the ones from one generation and they were counted from that generation, al kulan u'ayme, regarding all of them, it says v'shem rishayim yirkov, that they were actually rishayim and the names should be wiped out. And Valmi Nema Zechet Tzadik Levracha al Ben Katan v'Chaveirav. There was only one individual, Ben Katan and his friends, that are brought in the Gemara in Yuma that they were tzaddikim. So the Mefarshim here explained, this is actually a Gemara in Yuma that talks about this. We'll see also in the continuation of the Gemara over here, that these people that were in charge of different things, the reason why they were Rishayim is because they did not want to teach anyone else what they knew how to do, like to make the Lechem Apanim and the Ketayres and the different things, the Parayches. They didn't want to teach anyone else, so therefore they were Rishayim. But one of the questions on this is, one of the ones that are mentioned in the mission here is Mardechai. Mardechai L'chayre was certainly not a Rasha, so why does it mention him and say that they're all ashamed Rishayim Yerkov? Some want to say when it says Mardechai in the Mishnah, it doesn't really refer to Mardechai Tzaddik, it refers to someone else, not really Mardechai. Either way, there's a problem with this Girsa. There are other Girsayis over here. Let's go back to the Gemara.
How did they know the generation later to do all the things?
They always was a Messiah in that family. They left it in their own family. They didn't want any other family to learn it. It stayed in the family, Beis Aftinas, Beis Garma. We'll see later in the Gemara. There's a whole story. It's brought in the Bavli also. So the Gemara starts off now in connection to the scene of Zechet Tzadik Levrache. So Omer Rab Yoina Ksiv, it says in the pasuk, L'chein achalek loy berabim, I'll give him his portion berabim. V'satzumim yechalek shalal, and from the mighty ones he'll divide the spoils. Who is this referring to? Zeh Rabbi Akiva, Shehiskin Medrash, Halachis v'Agadis. Rabbi Akiva is the one that taught the drushes and all the halachis and all the agadis. And v'yashemrim, others say, Elo Anshe Knesses Agdela. Doesn't refer to Rabbi Akiva, it refers to Anshe Knesses Agdela. Elu Anshe Knesses Agdela Tiknu. Anshe Knesses Agdela were Mesak, and they're the ones that taught all these things. Ela Ma Tikin. So what did Rabbi Akiva do? What was something special about him that he instituted? Zeklalos Pratis. This refers to Klalos and Pratis. Some say this means that the drasha of Klal Prat was what Rabbi Akiva taught. Others say Klalos Pratis means Rabbi Akiva said certain klalim, like Rabbi Akiva V'aftal Racha Kamaycha, Rabbi Akiva Imezek Klal Gadol B'Teira. And also, Pratis, he taught details, like the Gemara says, Rabbi Akiva knew how to darshan every single kites in the Torah. Sagt the Gemara weiter, Amar Rabbi Vo, it says in the pasuk, Siv, Mishpachas, Seifrim, Yeshvi, Yavitz. There was a mishpacha of scribes that lived in the city of Yavitz. Mat Hamalohim Seifrim, what does it mean that there were scribes? Elisha Asuas, Ateiris, Furais, Furais. What it means is they taught Torah in a way with numbers, they should remember it. And the Gemara here brings examples from Mishnayos where it gives numbers to remember. Chamisha, La Yitraimu Truma. That's in the beginning of Masechta Trumas. Hey dvarim chayavim b'chala, the Mishnah of Chala. Chamesh esra noshim poitris tzariseyan, which is in Yevamis. Shloishim v'sheish krisis, in Masechta Krisis. Krisis b'teira. Shloish esra davan namru b'nivlas ha'oif, the 13 things by Nevela. B'nivlas ha'oif ha'toir, in Masechta Chulin, and dal davas nezikin, and avas melachas arbaim chasar achas. So all of these different numbers was what they gave in order to be able to learn Torah and to remember. Amar Rabbi Eliezer Ksiv, it says in the pasuk, LeEzra HaKayin HaSeifer. Ezra was a Seifer. So it says it before already. Matamad Loim HaSeifer. Why does it say again that he was a Seifer? Al Kishem Shahayu Seifer b'divrei Torah. Just like he was a Seifer, he was ascribed to writing Torah. Kacha Seifer b'divrei Chachamim. He was so too a Seifer in the words of the Chachamim. He counted the words of the Chachamim. Rab Chagi b'Shem Rab Shmuel bar Nachman said as follows: Harishainim, the earlier ones. Charshu, this is all a mashal the Gemara is going to bring for preparing bread, and it refers to preparing and learning Torah. Charshu, they plowed, and Vizaru, they planted, V'nichshu, they weeded, and Kischu, they trimmed, and Adru, they hoed, Katzru, they reaped, and Amru, they gathered, Dashu, and they threshed, and Zaru, they winnowed, and Biriru, they selected, and Tachnu, then they grind it, Herkidu, and then you sift it, and Lashu, they kneaded, and Kitfu, they shaped it, Va'afu, and they baked. These are all the malachas that are done to prepare bread. And they, the Rishainim, they were able to do all of these things to explain a halacha and Torah. And va'ano ein lanu malacha. We can't do any of these malachas. They prepared everything for us, and still we can't eat. We still have a hard time understanding Torah. Rab Abba bar Zmina b'shem Rab Zeira said, so you have this in the Gemara and Shabbos as well, but here the Gemara brings this in the Lashon of the Yerushalmi. In Havu Kadmon Malachim, if the previous generations are compared to Malachim, to angels, Anan b'nei Anash, we're merely human beings. V'in haven b'nei Anash, if they're compared to human beings, Anan chamarim, we're compared to donkeys. Amar Abmana ba Yishaita, Abmana said then, Amrin, they said, Afilik chamarte that Rab Pinchas ben Yair led minan. We are not even compared to the donkey of Rab Pinchas ben Yair. And here the Gemara brings the story, what was special about the donkey of Rab Pinchas ben Yair. Chamarte Rab Pinchas ben Yair, his donkey, genafto listoy balalia. It was stolen at night by thieves. Of this, Tmirte, Gabon, Tlasa Yemen, so they hid it in their possession for 3 days. For 3 days, they didn't want to eat anything. So after 3 days, imlechun, they made up their mind, machzarta, we're going to return it. Amri, they said, apkinun min hachal, let's get it out of here. The leitem is gaban, shouldn't die here by us. Afkuna, they let it out. Ozlos, it went. V'kamas la altara demara, and it went and stood at the gate of its owner, of Rab Pinchas ben Yair. Sharius menahakis, it began to bray, make noise. Amaloin, Rab Pinchas ben Yair told his servants, Paschen lahada alufta, open up the door for this donkey that was left over here alone. The isla tlas yayim and loitama klum, for 3 days it didn't need anything. Paschanla, they opened up for her. All this land came in. Amalayin Rab Pinchas ben Yair said to them, Yavala klum, teichel, give her something to eat. So Yav and Koma Sa'idin, they gave in front of her barley. And the donkey did not want to eat. Amrin lay, so they said to Rab Pinchas ben Yair, Rebbe, it doesn't want to eat. Amalayin, so Rab Pinchas ben Yair asked them, did you prepare it properly? Did you sift it? That it shouldn't have any pebbles in it? Amrulayin, yes, we sifted it. Amarlayin, so he said to them, Va'arimtun damien, did you take off even from the demai, which is a suffix? It's only a takanim d'Rabbanan, but did you take off the meises of the demai? Amrun lei, so they said to Rab Pinchas ben Yair, Loi kain alfan Rebbe, didn't you teach us what it says in the Mishnah, Halikeach, if you buy, and it's demai, you buy from an ama'aret, so if it's zera, if it was bought to plant, or lebehema, or was bought to feed an animal, or kamach la'iris, if you buy flour just to be used for the hides, to be able to tan it, or shemen l'mayr, if you buy oil for fire, patam and admai, in such a case when you're not eating it, since it's only a chumrah, so therefore you don't have to give any meises from demai, so it's only for the animal. We don't have to take any meises. Amalayin, so Rab Pinchas ben Yair said to them, Ma navid lo lahada lufta, what should I do to this abandoned donkey? Bihi machmera al garma sagin. She's very machmera on herself, and she's not going to eat unless you take the meiser from the demai. Va'arim and Damien, so they took the meiser from the demai, va'achlis, and this donkey then ate. So this was the unique donkey of Rab Pinchas ben Yair. Huh? No, right. Psachya ala kinin. So Psachya was appointed on the karbonis of the kinin, of the zavin and the zavis and the yeldis. So it says, see how great is the koich of this person. Peseach, dvarim, v'darshan. He could understand things that are not so simply understood. The Gemara will soon bring an example for this. Yedeya ba'ayin loshen, it said in the Mishnah that he knows 70 lashonis, Mardechai. So the Gemara says, Tani, we learned in the Braisa, Sanhedrin sheyesh ba shnayim shecholun ledaber. If you have in a Sanhedrin 2 of them that could speak all 70 languages, the kula and ru'uyin l'shmaya. The rest of them can't speak it, but they can understand it. So that's the least that you can have that would be good, a good Sanhedrin. Gimel, if you have 3 that can speak all 70 languages, Harezu Beininis. That's an average Sanhedrin. Dalit, if you have 4, Harezu Chachama. That's a wise Sanhedrin. Ubi Yavne, when the Sanhedrin was in Yavne, Hoyaba Dalit, there were 4 of them, Ben Azai, Ben Zayme, Ben Chachinoi, Rabbi Loza Ben Masya. They all understood 70 languages. Rav Chisda said, Pamachas Yav Sharet Yisrael. Here the Gemara is going to bring an example of understanding something that someone is making a signal for, or trying to tell you something, and you have to have the wisdom to know what he means. So the Gemara brings an example for this. Pamachas Yav Sharet Yisrael. Once there was a drought in Eretz Yisrael. They didn't know from where they're going to get barley for the carbon oima. There was a deaf mute person that had an idea. But he was giving them a signal, and they didn't understand what he was doing. So he placed one hand on the roof, and another hand he placed on a little hut, and he was trying to signal them where they can get the barley. So I seen it kamei the psachya. So they came in front of the psachya that was used in the Beis Hamikdash, that understood how to decipher what people are saying. Amalahu, so psachya told them, is Asad and Miskarya Gagois Tzrifin? Is there a place that has a name, Gagois Tzrifin, or Tzrifin Gagois? That's what he's trying to show you. That's why he's putting one hand on the roof and one hand on the tzrif to show you that you should go to that place. Ozlan and Haman, they went to that place, Va'ashkechan, and they found barley for the carbon oimer. A similar story, Amar Rav Yosef bar Bebun, Pam Achas, Nishtav Koloilam Kuloi. Once there was a strong wind and there was nothing for the carbon of They didn't know from where they're going to bring the Oimer. There was a deaf mute, he put one of his hands on his eyes, and another one of his hands on the sukhre, which is on the potion, I think that it means, suchra, means the hole that's in a door, actually, on the socket of a door. So they put his hands in two places to give a sign. So I seen legabe psachye, they brought him to Sachye to understand what he was saying. So again, he said to them, Is hasar the miskarye ein seicher, or seicher ayin? Is there a place that has the name ein seicher or seicher ayin? V'ozlun, they have taman, they went there, v'ashkechon, and they found the barley that they needed for the carbon aimer. Another example where you have to have the ability to decipher what the women that came to bring their karbanis were saying. Gimel Nashim. There were 3 women that came to the Beis HaMikdash. Heviu kineyem. They were bringing their birds for the karbanis. Achas emeres. One of them said le'einasi. That's the expression she used. V'achas emeres. Another one said le'yamosi. And v'achas emeres le'zivasi. So now you have to understand what they're trying to say. Zushay meres le'einasi, the one that said le'einasi, ayin is a wellspring, for my wellspring, sovereign meimar, they thought that she meant to say shefas kamayin, that she was flowing like a wellspring. In other words, she's a zava or a nida, she has to bring a carbon for that. Amalayin, so the Psachya said to them, no, be'ena sachne zu. She was in danger with her eyes, and she got saved from that, and she's bringing a carbon to thank the Eibusher for the fact that she was saved with her eyes. So Aina goes on the eyes, so you have to know how to understand what she was saying. Then, Zushay Meres Liyamasi, the one that was saying for the Yam, a Yam is a sea, sovereign Meimar, they thought that she meant to say, Shefas Kayam, that I'm flowing blood like a Yam, and therefore I have to bring a carbon for a Zava. Amaloin, so the Psachya said to them, no, Biyam Esachnas. She had a danger while she was traveling on the sea, and she got saved, and she's bringing a carbon for that. Zushay Meres Leziva, see the one that said for my Ziva, so that sounds pretty clear. Sovereign Meima, Zava Mamish. They thought that she was a Zava, that's what it sounds like. Amaloim, Psachi said to them, no, Zev Ba, little as Bena, a wolf came to grab away her child, and she was saved, and therefore she's bringing a carbon. So here you see that this Psachia had to know, had to understand what was being said. The next thing it said of the Mishnah was Ben Achia v'chulu. He was a doctor. So what's the reason you needed a doctor in the Beis HaMikdash? Al yedei shayikayin mahalchen yechefim al ritzba, because they were walking barefoot on a cold ground. There could be no chatzitza, and v'haya eichlem basa. They were eating a lot of meat every day. V'sheisim mayim, and they're only allowed to drink water there. So hayabayin le dechaylem mayim. So they had stomach issues. V'haviyada hai. This doctor, he knew dein chamar tav lamaya, which wine is good to make the stomach loose. V'hei dein chamar samam lamaya, and which stomach is good to opposite for the stomach to make it hard. So this was the specialty that he had, that he was appointed for this. Nechunya chayfeshich, and Nechunya would dig the ditches for the water for the people that were oile regel. So the Gemara he would dig the ditches and the caves, and he knew very well high day and cave mekarer, at which point, in which rock you can get cold water, cold water, and by which rock you can get hot water or warm water. And he also knew about he knew how deep the warm water goes, or some say he knew the temperature of this water that you're going to get over here. But Rabbi Eliezer said, Umeis benoi batzama. However, his very own son died from thirst, which means that he was punished for something he did. And the Mefarshim here say, because the Eibishter punishes a person, kechut asayri, even a great tzaddik that's careful in something, but he did something that was inappropriate, and therefore even a tiny little thing, he was punished, kechut asayri. And the Gemara here brings a few different things on this subject. Amar Rav Chanina said, Man da Amar Rachmana Vatran, whoever says that the Eibishter looks away and doesn't punish, Yizvatran b'nei meyoi. So his stomach should wither away, because he's making a big mistake. Ella rather, mayrich ruche, the Eibishter waits, he has a long time he waits, and v'gavi didei, but he collects what's owed to him. If you don't do tshuva, the Eibishter does punish. Amar Ravacha said, Ksiv, in the Pasuk it says, V'svivav, the ones that are close and are around the Eibishter, Nissara ma'oit. So the Gemara says, what does this mean? The Eibishter is very exact with them, even a tiny thing like a hair. The Eibishter is medaktik on them if they do something inappropriate. Amar Rav Yesi said, Loi matamazeh, that's not the source. The source is from another Pasuk, because it says, V'noiru hu al kol svivav. The Eibishter throws his fear on those that are around him. The fear of the Eibishter are on and those that are near him, more than those that are far. Rab Chagi b'shem Rab Shmuel bar Nachman said, Maise b'chassid echad. There was a story with a chassid, Shayachayfe, Beiris, Shichen, Amayris, La'ivrim, V'shavim, that would dig wells and the ditches and caves for the people that were passing by, that they should have water. So once it happened that his very own daughter was passing through to get married, to go to her chasana, and v'shotva nar, and the river came and washed her away, and they thought that she died. And v'haven kol alma alalin legabe, everyone came to him and bon menachmete, they wanted to be menachem avalim. V'lei kibul alei misnachma, he did not accept their nichem avelim. All Rab Pinchas ben Yair legabe, Rab Pinchas ben Yair came to him, boy menachmete, he wanted to be menachemim. V'lei kibul alei menachemta bisnachma, he did not accept the nichem avelim. Rab Pinchas ben Yair said, Deinu chasidchain, this is your chassid that he didn't want to accept the nichem avelim. Amrulei, so they said to Rab Pinchas ben Yair, Rabbi, kach v'kach hoya, this is what he used to do. He used to be the one to dig the water for us. And v'kach v'kach iralei, and this is what happens to him, that his own daughter gets washed away by the water. Amar, is it possible? So Rab Pinchas ben Yair said, is it possible that the same person that gave honor to the Eibishter with water, the Eibishter punishes him with water? Immediately there was a commotion in the city, and she appeared, his daughter appeared, she was there. Some say she was saved by holding on to a piece of wood. Others say, Malach Yarat Kidmus Rab Pinchas ben Yair, a Malach descended from heaven in the image of Rab Pinchas ben Yair ve'etzila, and saved her from the water. Gvini Kruz. It says in the Mishnah that the Gvini made the announcement in the Beis HaMikdash. What does this mean? Shahaya Machriz beVeis HaMikdash. He made the announcements in the Beis HaMikdash. Mahaya Aim. What would he say? Imdu HaKayanim LaVayda. Get up, Kayanim, to do the work in the Beis HaMikdash. Or Leviim L'Duchanan. And the Leviim to go up to the platform to do their to sing. And Yisraelim HaModam. And the Yisraelim that did their Maimed to go to their place. Agrifis HaMelech. Shama Kailai heard the voice of this announcer so far at Ches Parsois. 8 parsois away, he heard his voice. Very far away. He was so impressed by this, he gave him gifts for making these announcements. Ben Gever al Neilas She'arim, person that had a name of Ben Gever was appointed on Neilas She'arim. So the Gemara here says this term Ben Gever is used in another place. It's used in a Mishnah or in a Gemara in Yuma. And there, Tirgim Rav, Komei de Beis Rab Shila. So when Rav taught that Mishnah in Yuma there, so he interpreted in the front of the students of Rab Shila, Kra Gavra. When it says Kra Gavra, that the Gavra called, who is this referring to? Achris Kruza, the one that makes the announcement, announced. Amalei, so Rab Shila said to him, Emoir, no, Gavra is not a person. Over there, the pshat is Kara Tarnagoila. It refers to the rooster that announces, that crows. Amalei, so Rav said to him, but Vataninon, here in Masechta Shkalim it says, Ben Gever, that Islach Lameim, a Bar Tarnagoila, the one that closed the She'arim in the Beis HaMikdash, you're going to say it was a rooster. So over here, Ben Gever means a person. So he said over there in Yuma, it also means a person. The next thing is said of the Mishnah, Ben Bevoi ala Pekia. Ben Bevoi was appointed on the Pekia, the wicks. What does this mean? He made the wicks to be in pairs. They should all be similar, that they should all burn with a similar light. Rabbi Yosi ala Kufra. Rabbi Yosi came to the city of Kufra. He wanted to appoint upon them leaders that should take care of them. None of them wanted to be appointed to be a leader on them. It says that Snas Arabanas, you're not supposed to, you shouldn't want to be in a position of leadership. No one wanted to be a leader. So he came and told them, Ben Bevoi ala Pekia. In our Mishnah, it brings this Ben Bevoi that was appointed to the wicks. So now, that's a very small job that he had. But he was appointed to take care of the wicks. And he's counted here in the Mishnah, together with other great people. If you're going to be appointed here on this city to take care of the people of the city, on the livelihood of people, most definitely you have a tremendous chus, so you should accept to be appointed. The next thing it said in the Mishnah was Ben Arzal Atzlotzal, on the symbols, Kihadet Hanina, like it says in the Braise, or in the Mishnah actually in Tamid, Tamon, that Heinif has gone Bisdarin, this Gan picked up his handkerchief And then v'hikish ben Arza al atzlotzal. That was the sign for Ben Arza to know that he should hit the cymbal and begin the Levian playing the music. Hugras ben Levi al Ashir, he was appointed on singing. Amar avacha ne'ime yiseda hoya yedeya. He knew how to sing very pleasantly. V'amru alav, and they al Hugras ben Levi, they said about him, shayemanim as kaile bezema, that he would sing so beautifully. Ikeshayenoyetz goydle b'toich piv. He put his thumb into his mouth. Hayamitzi kamem in his zema. He was able to make all kinds of sounds with his mouth. And their heads went sort of backwards. They flew backwards from the tremendous voice that he had to sing. Beis Garma ma'isa lechem upon him. The next one it said in the Mishnah was Beis Garma took care of the lechem upon him. Says the Gemara, Beis Garma hayibikim b'ma'isa lechem upon him. They knew how to make the lechem upon him with a unique shape that it came out like with faces facing each other. So they knew how to make it. They also knew how to remove it from the oven and it shouldn't break apart. And they didn't want to teach anybody else. Chachamim sent ve'eviu umanim in Alexandria. They brought craftsmen from Alexandria that should take their place. Shayibikim b'ma'isa lechem upon him. They knew how to make the lechem upon him. But they didn't know how to remove it properly from the oven. So Beis Garmu, the Gemara explains the difference. Beis Garmu, hayimasikim mibifnim. They baked it inside the oven, and until it was well baked, and then v'raidim mibachutz. They removed it when it was already outside from the pan. They were able to remove it outside, and it kept its shape well. And it did not get spoiled. But ve'elu, the craftsmen from Alexandria, hayimasikim mibifnim. They baked it in the oven. V'raidim mibifnim. They would remove it before it was fully well baked because they didn't know how to do it otherwise. And it got spoiled. When Chacham found out about this, Amru, they said, everything the Eibusha created, every craft is all created for the Eibusha's honor. It's all for the Eibusha's sake. So Sholchu Achreim, they sent back to this Beis Garmu, they should come back to continue doing their job. They didn't want to come back. Until they said like, they gave them double of their pay. The Beis Garmu. Yud Beis Mana Hayu Neitlim. Till now they would paid 12 mana. V'noslam Chavdalet. Now they paid them double, 24. Rab Yudayim Chavdal Hayu Neitlim. They were being paid before 24. V'noslam Memches. Now they paid them 48. Amalehen. So they said to them, why don't you want to teach this to anyone else? So they answered, there's a tradition we have in our hands, from our forefathers, that the Beis Hamikdash is going to be destroyed. We don't want anyone else to learn this, that they should do it in front of their Avodah Zarah. Okay, so we'll see in the Gemara, they didn't really accept this, it was an excuse, or were they sincere about this? Kalpana, they didn't want to teach it to anyone else. But regarding this matter that the Gemara will mention now, they were mentioned in a praiseworthy way, which is none of their children ever had white, clean bread. So no one should suspect them and say, oh, they took what they have from the lechem upon him. The Gemara brings the exact same story now, when you get to the Beis Haftinis by the Ma'aseh Kteiris. Beis Haftinis on Ma'aseh Kteiris, Shal Beis Haftinis, Ha'ibikin on Ma'aseh Pitam Kteiris, they knew how to make the Kteiris. B'Maila Ha'oshan. And they also knew there was a certain herb that's called Maila Oshan, and the reason it's called Maila Oshan is because the smoke that comes out goes up in a straight column. So they knew which herb this is, and they knew how to prepare it. They didn't want to teach anyone else. So they brought the craftsmen from Alexandria. They knew how to make the Kteiris, but this herb they did not know. So shall Beis Haftinis when the Beis Haftinis prepared the Kteiris, so the smoke went up in a straight column like a stick, and then it spread out and came down. But from the craftsmen of Alexandria, it just spread out immediately. It didn't go up in a column. When Chacham found out about this, they said, is lechvayde. The Eibusha should create everything with bara. He created it for his own honor. And the Gemara brings another pasuk we had before called Paul Masha Paul Kadosh Baruch Hu Paul El Maneo Shenema called Paul Shem Maneo. So Shalchu Achreim, they sent after the Beis Haftinas, they should come back. But they didn't want to come to do it. And they paid them the extra. Yud Beis Manai Neitlim v'Noslam Chavdalet. Rabbi Yudayim Chavdalet Neitlim v'Noslam Memches. They paid him double. Why don't you want to teach it to anybody? So So they said, we have a tradition, we have a seinu, we don't want anyone else doing this, and they're avodah zarah. But dvarim alalu, however, regarding this matter, they were mentioned in a praiseworthy way. None of the women of this house, of this family, ever went out with any perfume. And not only that, if any of them got married to any woman from another family, he made a condition with her, that you will not have any perfume. That nobody should say that they're using from the ketores for the perfume. To fulfill what it says, that you should come clean in the eyes of Hashem and in the eyes of Yidden. Let's finish this inyan over here of the ketores. I was once in Yerushalayim, and I found a child from the house of Avtinis. I said to him, from which family are you? So he said, I'm from this family of Avtinis. So I said to him, B'ni, my son, Avisecha, your forefathers, Lefishin Iskavno, Lerabis Kvaidan, they didn't share their knowledge that they had to know how to make the ketores with anybody else, and they did it only for their own honor. Ulamayat kavod shemayim, and they wanted to minimize the Eibishter's honor. Lefichach, therefore, what happened was kvaydam nismayit. They lost their position. The Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, and their honor was taken away. The kvod shemayim nisrabe. After the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the Eibishter's honor went up because the Goyim saw how the Eibishter punishes and how the Eibishter destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. So the Eibishter's honor went up. Rabbi Kiva said, Sachli Shimon ben Luga told me, Malaket, Hayisi Asavim, I was collecting grass or herbs. Ani, Vitinik Echad, Nishalbeis Avtinis. And I was there together with another child from the house of Avtinis. Virisi Eisa Shabacha. I saw that he was crying. And then Virisi Eisa Shasachak. And then I saw he was laughing. Amarti lebini lama bachisa. Why were you crying? Amali al Kavash Beisaba Shemismayit. For the honor of my father's house that was now minimized, that we don't have our position anymore. Velama Sachakta. So why did you laugh? Amali al Kavad Amasuk. Tzadikim lost it lave, for the honor that it's going to be returned to the tzadikim lost it lave when we'll get back our position. Omar Isa, what is it that you saw that you were laughing? What evoked your emotions? Maila Ashan lenegdi. I saw this herb that's Maila Ashan, that the smoke goes up in a straight column. I told him, Bini, my son, Hareyuli, show it to me. Amali Rabbi, my Rebbe, Messiahs biyadi. There's a tradition in my hands, from my forefathers, not to show it to anybody. Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri said, one of our older person from this house of Avtinis met me, and he had a Megillah which had all the samanim and how to prepare it in his hands. And he told me as follows, Rabbi, the Sha'avar in the past, people of my house, from my family, were very discreet about this. And they gave over this Megillah from one generation to the next, and they kept it in the family. From one to the next. But I can't trust anymore the people of my family. Hey, Lachas and Megillah, I'm giving it to you. And be careful with it. This is the story that happened to who? To Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri. Okay, I came and I told Rabbi Kiva about the story. Zolgoen of the Mois, he cried and he said, now we don't have to look at them in the negative way. The fact that they didn't want to hand down the secret to anybody else was not because they wanted to keep it for themselves, but he was ready to give it over to Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri when he felt that the family is not going to keep it as a secret. So therefore they shouldn't be mentioned anymore in disgrace. Alazar ala pareiches, like the Gemara, he was the one that was in charge of the ones that were weaving the pareiches. Pinchas ha-malbish, shayim malbish, bigdei kahune gedayla. He would dress the kain gadol with his begadim. Mother brings an example for such a thing. Maisa b'kayin echad. There's a story with a kain shehilbish le'estratyos echad. He dressed up one officer, and v'nasan lahi, and he paid him for this service. Shmein is a huvim, 8 gold coins. Viz the Amrin, and others say, Trei asri yav leid, that he gave him 12 gold coins for this.